Now, if you follow the National Transportation Safety Board report, it's just about word for word what the U.S. Coast Guard report is, okay? And the bottom line was, in the whole doggone thing, well, ineffective hatch covers caused the sinking. However, there was a dissenting opinion of that. And that
Now, I'm not saying this has never before heard or seen evidence, but it's certainly new to me, uncovered by none other than Captain Darrell. The dissenting opinion of a guy named Philip Hogue. Well, who was Philip Hogue? Well, you'll find out in this piece. This is really interesting. This leads to, in my opinion, a grounding of the Edmund Fitzgerald as to her demise. Watch.
This is the 50th anniversary coming up. I'm looking very forward to November. And for you folks at home, are we rolling, by the way?
Oh, by the way, we are.
Cool. I want to invite everybody that's watching to come up there and pay us a visit. You know, we'd like to talk with you. We get so many wonderful comments. A lot of people say, we'd like to make it up there. It's a fur piece, folks. It's up there ways, you know.
And then we'll be there for the commemoration of the 50th for the Fitzgerald at Whitefish Point Lighthouse. That's the plan.
That's the plan.
Well, the story of the Fitz, I'm obsessed. I'm fascinated. What has it been for you?
It's the Fitz itself. I'm not going to call it a curse. I'm not going to call it anything like that. Karma, it just, once it gets a hold of you, it is such a mystery how anything that big can just disappear. I mean, this ain't David Copperfield making the Statue of Liberty disappear. That's all smoke and mirrors and this kind of crap, you know. This is the real deal here, see. Now, you said a couple of answers. I have got a couple of pieces of the puzzle that is going to be discussed here real soon.
I think for me, there's something, it's twofold. My number one goal in this has always been to increase the focus on the 29 men, including your uncle, your dad's brother, who went down on the Fitzgerald, to tell their stories and to keep their memories alive. And for all the Great Lakes mariners who went down in the service of duty. That's number one for me. Secondly, to answer some of these questions that have been lingering for decades, to put more pieces of the puzzle together so that you at home can draw your own conclusions as to what happened to the Fitzgerald. So you want to start where?
Well, like you said, in England and New Zealand and Australia, people all over the world have this fascination about the Fitz because I think it's such a big object to disappear.
Yeah. Good. I think it's also a fascination for the Great Lakes, arguably the largest body of fresh water in the world. Do you have new stuff where you
Yes, here we go. The National Transportation Safety Board, okay? This is where I'm going to start this because there's just so much. Now, if you follow the National Transportation Safety Board report, it's just about word for word what the U.S. Coast Guard report is, okay? And the bottom line was, in the whole doggone thing, well, ineffective hatch covers caused the sinking. They kind of tried to poo-poo the grounding out on Cuba Shoals. However, there was a dissenting opinion of that, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now. And I want to thank, hold on, let me get his name here, one of your commenters here, and he's a subscriber, James Madden.
Oh, yeah, James Madden. He leaves some great commentary. Very
supportive. Sailor's hat there, James, thank you.
James Madden, we're big supporters of you.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you.
So he said, hey, Cap, you probably haven't read that NTSB report, but and I had, but I hadn't read it in a long time. So I went and I read it again. I read it 2-3 times. And it wasn't until the third time something jumped right out at me. All right. Anyway, James Madden, what he sent us was the dissenting opinion. The guy's name is Philip A. Hogue, and he's a member of the NTSB. But in just 2 minutes, I want to tell you who this guy is to give you an idea how qualified he was. He was in the U.S. Navy from 1942 to 49. He was in the Coast Guard from 52 as the search and rescue pilot in Massachusetts, Newfoundland, Florida, and Puerto Rico. From 1962 to 66, he was Chief of Training and Logistics Branch of the United Nations Division of the Coast Guard, headquarters in Washington, D.C. He was the liaison officer and staff of Chief Naval Air Training Station, Pensacola, Florida, from 66 to 68. He became Chief of search and rescue in the 8th District in New Orleans. 1970-72, he was Coast Guard Station Kodiak, Alaska, doing all sorts of search and rescue missions. He then returned to Coast Guard in Washington, D.C., where he was chief of the Aviation Safety Board. That's why they chose him to be a member of the National Transportation Safety Board.
Well qualified to have an opinion. To have an opinion.
Absolutely. However, that would come back and bite him square in the butt.
Oh.
And I'll get to that in a minute. Because what he is saying in this report, and I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just say that to him, it never, as the Fitzgerald reported, to come into port with wet cargo. So, and the first damage report wasn't called in until, oddly enough, right there at Caribou Shoal, with shallow water, 6 fathom shoal, you know. And what was the report? I have a list, fence rails down, and I'm missing some vent covers. Now, a couple hours later, 3 or 4 hours later, when he talks to Captain Woodward, that would be 2 hours later, at 17th, that would be 5:30, on the Aberforce, he said, I have a bad list.
So it went from a list to a bad list.
And I've lost both radars. It was 2 hours later when he didn't have his radars then, okay? That's why he needed the help from the Anderson. Now, we're going to get into some heavy stuff here, buddy. And it was an hour and 40 minutes after that she went down. Now, nobody knows for certain exactly because nobody was there. It's just like Captain Cooper said, he had never known a ship to lose a fence rail in a seaway. Never. You know, it was 40 years. And the only way you could do it is to hog that ship when you hit something.
Okay, so that's a serious clue. Cooper, who sailed for 40 years, had never seen that happen before. But it happened here.
Like he said, the only solution they can have is a fence rail breaking. You can't break one by sagging the ship, but you'd have to bend the ship, hog it up in the middle with such a tension that it snapped it. And that's exactly what he's talking about here. That Captain Woodward of the Aberforce said it was one of the biggest and wildest seas I have ever been in. I mean, fast. The sea was straight up and down, and a lot of them were coming at you, not like the big rollers. Now, this is what Commander Hogue says. After studying all the available information, it is my firm conclusion that the Fitzgerald shoaled and sustained her initial damage shortly before 1530, and that thereafter the various workings of the vessel and the loss of watertight integrity led to her sudden and totally unexpected sinking. Because he dissented against what all the other big boys were saying. When it came time to renew his membership, they told him to hit the bricks.
Really?
They wouldn't renew it.
And by the way, when you said the Aberforce pilot down there said this is one of the worst seas I've ever seen, and you know the Aberforce was an ocean salty. They had seen it all. So go right ahead.
Let's talk for a second about what really did happen here. Now, what did he say when he says, "What have you got your pumps going?" Remember, he said, "And I got them both going." Now, let us remind everybody, just in case they're not up to speed on it. She had 4 electrically driven 7,000 gallon per minute ballast pumps and 2 electrically driven 2,000 gallon. Now, let us suppose for just a moment you're using the 2,000 gallon guys, right? But you ain't getting nowhere. you ain't gaining on it. In other words, don't you think you'd kick in the 7,000 gallon one to help get that out of there? Now, don't forget, here's the boat, right? Now he's got a bad list on this side. Well, if your C-section's up here, you couldn't use 2 of them. Got 2 on this side, 2 on that side. You couldn't pump on that side. You could only pump on this side. So this side's totally useless. And there's sluices run down each side of that of the cargo hold there to that little sump in the back. Okay, that's how they would pump when they hose down the cargo hold. You know, sometimes ships haul different cargoes. Now here we go. The pumps, valves, and the manifolds. Okay, they're in the. Once again, I've seen them. They're located in the forward section of the lower engine room. Now, this is where it gets crazy here. You want a smoking gun? This is, I think, one of them right here. Okay, the Coast Guard regulations require a bilge pumping plant capable of pumping from or draining any watertight compartment. Now, that'd be watertight bulkhead in the forward end, right? Watertight bulkhead for the engine room, right? As an anti-pollution measure, EPA, the discharge from the engine room bilges could only be pumped into the cargo. Now, let us go back, if we may. If I get my hair out of my eyes here. Who says it? Captain Dudley Paquette on the Wilfred Sykes. He's anchored by the aisle royal there, and he overhears Captain McSorley talking to Captain Cooper. I've had to check back from 99 RPM to 55 RPM because I've never seen this ship move this bad, like ever. I've had to throttle back. Now, if, and it's a big if, I understand this, when they put that new propeller blade on and it wasn't balanced right, and it took a certain amount of time, that shaft seal, you know, being out of balance, like the old Corvette story, right? If you're going to buy a tire and put it on yourself in your garage and you don't have no balancing thing, you're going to be in trouble. That tire's going to go. And I think that's what was happening on that propeller until they started taking on all kind of water. And by checking back, maybe the flooding wasn't as bad. But could they, if you're taking, water's 8 pounds a gallon, for God's sakes. And if you're taking on thousands of gallons, if you can pump it overside, then you're not gaining no weight. But if you got to pump it on the cargo hold, on top of the cargo, you're continually adding more weight to the ship. And that's why McSorley said, I've never seen such seas. The entire ship was awash because he's getting lower and lower. And that's what Philip Hogue is saying right there. I mean, it only makes perfect sense. But nowhere was there anything about a prop blade being replaced. It was, I mean, it was, remember the trial of the Edmund Fitzgerald, that book that I've got sitting right there? You know, it was brought up, but it wasn't put in a final report for whatever reason, okay? So if they're putting all this doggone water inside the cargo hold, you're adding weight to the vessel. It's that simple, and you can't get rid of it because the cargo is compressed so much, it'll absorb 7%. Taconite will absorb 7% of moisture. If it was me, and I'm in that engine room, and I'm a chief engineer, and I'm thinking, we're going to die, or I'm going to pump this over the side. Because from doing boat surveys, yachts and small crafts, if you have a sheen on the water, it's a $5,000 fine from the Coast Guard, right?
So I'm trying to understand all this. I know they pump water from the ballast tanks, but
over the side.
But they were also trying to pump water from the engine hold.
Engine room itself, it cannot. You're not
But
allowed to
they
pump it over the
can't
side.
do it because you're virtually pumping out some oil. with it.
That's correct.
But in the pinch of it all, wouldn't they do it anyway?
Unless it was already piped up to go a certain way to make sure you didn't accidentally do it over the side. I don't know. Sure would like to hear from anybody out there sailing a Fitz in the engine room that could verify that. But they're saying right there that it had to be pumped on top of the cargo for Environmental Protection Agency rules and regulations, Coast Guard regulations too. So You're adding that much more weight to the boat. Of course he's getting, never seen such waves, he said. Well, the Anderson has saw the same waves, you know. Now, we're just not quite there. Let me put the boat away. Okay, like I said, this guy was pretty doggone qualified to make these kind of
And
statements.
his name was Hogue?
Yes, Philip A. Hogue, Hogue. He was a dissenting opinion member of the NTSB, okay?
And no longer a member after the report.
No, they told him to hit the bricks, pal.
That's interesting.
Gee, my 45 years of seniority means nothing. Yeah. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is going to knock some socks off because it knocked my socks off. I'm telling you that right now, okay? And I want to thank a guy on one of these contributors again, Michael Grace, 3020. Does that name ring a bell? Another tip of the sailor's cap to you, my good man.
Michael Grace, yes, thank you.
Okay, he sent a nice, he sent several. And one of them, I'm reading it, and it floored me. I just could not comprehend this.
What'd it say?
Funny you should ask that question. All right, here we go.